Okay, we are going to talk about the dreaded shanks. Shank, I'm going to say it, it's not contagious. It's a terrible thing for golfers to have, but it's the easiest thing to fix. There's always a really logical reason why someone is shanking the ball. So as an instructor, then I enjoy teaching people who have the shanks because I know that we can get them better. So let's start out by talking about why you shank the ball, which might sound pretty obvious, but the reason that you shank the ball is because at impact, then the club ends up further away from you than when it started. So instead of hitting in the center of the club, then the club hits in this heel area. Okay, so that's what causes a shank. You're hitting out of this area of the club here instead of out of the center. So then it's a question of figuring out, well, why are you hitting in that part of the club? And really there's only a few reasons why that may happen. Okay, one reason, which I must say is one of the least likely causes, is that at the setup position you're just standing too close to the ball to begin with. So then at some point during the swing, the body kind of moves into where it wants to be, which then gets the club swinging back further away from you than when you started. But it is worth checking the distance that you are from the ball, making sure that you've got a good posture where you're bending from your hips, your arms just hanging from your shoulders, not reaching out, not pulling in, and you're set up with the club right behind the ball. So distance from the ball is one reason. Another reason could be at some point during the swing, then the body is moving closer to the ball, which then moves everything out. Okay, so for that, we're going to think about, where is the weight on your feet? Are you in a balanced position? Is it too much near the toes that's getting you toppling forwards? Is it too much on the heels, which then at some point you make a compensation for it and it ends up back on your toes again? You want to feel that the weight is really evenly distributed between your feet, you're stable, and as you're making your backswing, it stays in that place as you're turning. Another reason is that during the swing, either on the backswing or the downswing, as you're making your backswing, and sometimes the body gets lower and it dips, and in doing so you start moving closer to the ball. Okay, so I'm demonstrating here on the backswing, I'm getting lower and I'm moving closer to the ball. If you stay there, then the club is going to come back to the ball further away than when you started. So just check that. Either do some practice in a mirror where you can kind of watch where your eyes are. Do they move lower? Do they move forward? Are you changing the angles on your backswing? Similarly, then you might make a really great backswing, but on the downswing, if you hit too much with the body, the upper body I should say, then that can get you out, and it can get you lower, and it can get the strike closer to the heel. Okay, so this third thing that you need to check for is at some point during the swing, is one part of the body or another moving you closer to the ball, which means that the arc of your club is going to be wider than when you started. Okay, so definitely worth checking that out. With people who I've seen with that mistake, then sometimes just being aware, for example, that on the backswing the head is moving down and forward is a good way of helping them. You can just kind of have someone hold something lightly against your head that isn't going to hurt you, just to make you aware of kind of where you are as you transition, just to give you some awareness of where your body is during the swing. The last cause of of a shank is that the club swings on an arc where it swings out further than when it started. Okay, now this can happen if your swing is too flat or too shallow. Okay, if the swing is too shallow, then the width of your arc is going to increase, which means that even if you start in the right place and your body doesn't move, the club can swing out further away from you than when you started. Okay, so if your swing arc is too much around or too shallow, then that can give you a shank, which is why the opposite is true too. If someone has a swing that's too up and down, too vertical, then they're going to tend to get toe strikes. Okay, so that one, the arc is a little bit harder to figure out by yourself. Like, you might need to work out whether it's on this takeaway that the club is swinging around, which is getting you swinging out at impact, or whether, you know, it swings around across the line at the top, reroutes, and then get shallow on the downswing. But if the swing is too shallow, two in, two out, one thing that can happen is that you can shank the ball. So that is worth thinking about. And if you think, okay, that's the reason I'm shanking it, then you might want to get a lesson with an instructor who understands swing plane, and that instructor can help you fix it. Having said all of that, no matter what the cause of your shank is, a drill that is really great to get you away from a shank is this one that I've got here. So I have a ball and I have a small bucket. It's a driving range bucket, it's plastic, it's very lightweight. I'm going to emphasize you need a lightweight bucket when you're doing this, that if you hit it, it isn't going to hurt you. So the bottom line is that if you shank the ball, the club is going to come back further away than when you started. Okay, so this small bucket is going to give you feedback. So the drill that you're going to do is you're going to position this bucket so that you have room for your club to make a good shot. But if it swings out too much, then you're going to hit the bucket. Now, in my experience, people are pretty good at figuring out what they need to do to not hit the bucket. Okay, so regardless of what the cause of the shank is, whether they're standing too close, whether it's a balance issue, whether their body is getting closer to the ball at some point during the swing, or whether it's a swing plane issue, then this drill at least gives you awareness of whatever it is that you're trying to fix. You've got to do that and then hit the ball without hitting the bucket. So the bucket drill isn't going to get necessarily to the root of the problem, but it's going to give you some feedback. It's going to be a short-term relief you away from the shank while you fix the underlying issue. Shanks are not fun to have. I have a very shallow swing. I get them occasionally. They're not fun, but don't be afraid of them. They're very fixable. It's only logic. You've just got to figure out what the cause of them is, and then it's just a case of working on your technique to eradicate that cause. So think about your swing, where the issue is, and then just work on that with a bucket to give you feedback about whether your strike is getting more towards the center of the face. I really hope that helps.